Frohes neues Jahr allerseits. Ich bin geehrt, heute mit Ihnen sprechen zu können. Ich möchte mich ganz herzlich bei Herrn Professor Mark Sakara bedanken für die Einladung, mit Ihnen zu sprechen. Ich möchte mich auch ganz herzlich bei Frau Präsident Professor Dr. Victoria Busch und Herrn Professor Dr. Christoph Hettich für ihre Gastfreundschaft bedanken. Ich muss mich entschuldigen für meine Unfähigkeit, weiter auf Deutsch zu sprechen. Und ich bedanke mich für Ihre Geduld. I want to thank you all for the work you are doing to prepare the next generation of singers. I know well the work you're doing and the dedication it requires, inasmuch as my own father was engaged in such service, teaching high school band and choir throughout his career. To teach the singer to work in a way that's healthy, to instruct him or her in the importance of good diction, to train the voice to its utmost capability. These are the worthy goals of your profession. However, and as I am sure you already know, the development of technical skills alone is not the ultimate goal of your work or that of your students. It is also, I would argue, not the primary reason audiences come out to hear most singers. Your students decided to come to you for training because they fell in love with the sound, the act, the feeling of singing. Their emotions have been touched and transformed by the ecstatic sound of great singers they have heard, and now they want to join in. A magnetic impulse of the heart has directed them to learn techniques of singing that will allow them to amplify and broadcast feelings. Now that they have found you, your students will face challenges to those feelings. Singers, as we know, can be particularly sensitive when it comes to the rigors of intense vocal training. We are our own attenuated, delicate instruments. The discernment involved in vocal grooming can all too easily become harsh judgment. Conversely, it can be emotionally wrenching for a singer to have to unlearn bad habits. In addition, close work with other singers can become corrosive competition. The very impulse that led the student to you can get lost in the maze of assignments or sour from impatience. There are just too many ways in which the desire to sing at all can come to a painful end. On the other hand, some young musicians can become mesmerized by the development of their own technical wizardry. Virtuosity becomes the end in itself. In the jazz world, in which I work, singers and instrumental musicians alike graduate conservatory in large numbers, able to play and sing with remarkable technical precision. Great extended choruses of extemporaneous math to little or no emotional impact. Neither of these options serve the singer. The needful audiences hungry and waiting to be thrilled, or the music itself. As it says in the Bible, even if I speak with the tongues of angels and have not love, I am only a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. So today I hope to speak to you about helping your students enhance the emotional impact of performance with some concrete and encouraging tools. I propose 3 main areas. 1, the need and ability to embody the music. 2, the curation and creation of signature musical content. And 3, the framing of such content with stagecraft and storytelling. Allow me to give you some personal background, tell you where I'm coming from. My earliest memories come from the emotional experience of music. In addition to teaching high school music throughout the week, My father was a Kapellmeister, leading choirs and playing the pipe organs of churches built by German immigrants in the American Midwest. As you know, Lutherans love to sing. Every week of his adult life, my father led great, rapturous festivals of musical praise. The heightened language of Luther's theology, coupled with communal hymns that had their basis in Bach's ingenious counterpoint. These made musical platforms for inspiration and revelation that tied congregants to the seasons of the church, to forefathers, to the harvest, and to the transcendent. The ability of music and heightened language to perform such wonders does not stop at the church door. As Leonard Bernstein said, music itself can name the unnameable and communicate the unknowable. Certainly the greatest jazz musicians I've ever encountered, both in person and on recordings, all sang and played the same glorious news. John Coltrane was reaching through the ingenuity of music for the same ecstatic experience as Mozart. Duke Ellington strove to create and broadcast the same intoxicating vibrancy as Beethoven. Wayne Shorter, that dear and powerful musical bodhisattva, has been playing a benediction to every open heart he has ever encountered through performance. Now here I should pause and make note of one or two things that are unique to the qualities of music performance when it is sung. They will both be obvious to the members of this guild, but important to our point. The first is that we singers are ourselves the literal instruments of musical conveyance. When I make music, my body itself reverberates. I am not manipulating some beautifully crafted and glued pieces of wood and metal. I am singing. My brain, my heart, my body, my unmitigated entire self. Singers embody singing. The second quality is that singers generally sing music with lyrics. Thanks or no thanks to lyrics, singers usually have specific emotional messages to convey, specific stories to tell, even as they attempt to conjure the unmitigated and transcendent singing experience. Now, these two truths, when taken together, mean that we are both the literal instruments that produce and convey the sonic content of music compositions and the avatars of their emotional import. Singers embody the song. One can hear in a moment's listening that Billie Holiday embodies the music much more than Ella Fitzgerald ever did. Of course, Ella is a wizard at scatting. She sounds great. But Billie manifests the feeling, the intense suffering pain or tipsy joy that's otherwise only latent in each song that she sings. So much so that we feel it too. That experience is similar when comparing Louis Armstrong to, say, Mel Torme. Torme was a truly sensational improviser and an omni-capable technician, but somehow the level of precision with which he sings sets a distance up between Torme and his audience. Or maybe it's just the fact that he loves his own abilities just a little bit too obviously. But with Louis, the listener feels that she or he is receiving a present of the heart. A biographer famously asked the actor Cary Grant, that suave and effortlessly elegant image of 20th century grace and insouciance, just how it was that he went from being the second-born son of a distinctly working-class alcoholic father and a mother who'd been institutionalized for depression. How it was that he went from being the utterly unknown Archibald Alec Leach to being Cary Grant, movie icon. His answer? I pretended to be him until I, in fact, became him. So it is in singing. If they don't already connect deeply with their song choices, our students need to pretend to manifest the stories they sing until they have enough life experience to truly embody them. They need to start acting. Now, I'm sure you've all encouraged your students to think of each song as a dramatic vignette, a story to bring to life. Now, I further suggest that you have them analyze, memorize, and perform the lyrics alone as though they would a dramatic monologue. At least ask them to sing the melody while letting the lyric drive all the phrasing, apart from any meter or beat or accompaniment, as conversationally as possible. At least teach them to sing to the end of a sentence or to the end of a proper phrase or thought. No breaths in the middle of a phrase, please. Don't let the songwriters, who have to place the lyrics in certain cantankerous ways, control the way the singer phrases anything. Now, as I mentioned earlier, your singers have already experienced the emotions being broadcast to them when they hear great singers. Now they have to learn to reverse that experience and feel the emotions they themselves must broadcast to others. So invite them to dip into the actor's toolkit by creating characters with backstories for their performances. Similarly, we know that directors give actors blocking, the instructions that tell actors where and how to stand, what to do with their hands, etc. I'm sure all of you have had to confront the student who never knows what to do with his or her hands. Well, if the two of you act as the director of the play, then you'll both be taking on the responsibility, at least until the singer can learn to direct himself or herself. Now, I'm more than 25 years into a professional career, so I don't have to pretend or even act my songs anymore, though I am conscious on every occasion of the need to embody them. Here's a late-stage phenomenon. These days, when I sing certain romantic songs, specific images, even small films like old Polaroids or old home movies, hazy memories begin to flash in my mind's eye, unbidden. I see the poorly lit college apartment I was in when she broke up with me. I see her breaking up with me. I see the gleeful young face covering up under the sheets. When these memories arise in the performance, I welcome them and I hold on to them. They are unbidden proof that I am effectively grounding my singing in my own actual true life. Another exercise for students. Ask them to create medleys of songs. They should be able to suture 3 different songs in a row to tell a story that requires the musical embodiment of at least 3 distinct and different, but related, emotional states. First, boy meets girl, all the thrilling infatuation that brings. Then, misunderstanding, confusion, perhaps they're misled. Still can't imagine a world without. And finally, resignation and heartbreak. Film the singers and make them watch with the sound off. Can they name the emotion they're trying to project? Now, by focusing on such exercises, I don't mean that you should ignore or lessen the attempts you're making as singing teachers to help your students become expert vocal technicians. Far from it. Instead, I want to augment what you're already teaching in ways that seem to me to be undervalued. Virtuosity in itself is never the end game. All the years I've spent in development as a technician, I put in the service of storytelling and embodiment. For the average listener, my singing technique should be invisible. If I can sing one line of a few bars from a triple forte to a whispered pianissimo, without a break, without a breath, That should be an emotional event. What should happen in the moment is that people weep because they can hear my heart breaking. Now, regarding the curation and creation of signature content. It is 2022. We all know the dangers that beset us and the trials that the world has been suffering. While it's obvious that singing instructors turn to canonical or standard compositions as the proving grounds for developing singers, such compositions do not necessarily speak to a contemporary audience's wants or needs. Nor are Tin Pan Alley or Broadway hits from the 20th century necessarily the easiest conduits for young singers hoping to vibrate with musical emotion that is sincere. It's a long way to go back to whenever. If I may offer a few suggestions. First, go further back in time. I assume you've heard Cecile McLaurin-Salvant, marvelous singer, so smart. Now, in addition to writing strong new material, Cecile has been very successful mining older, out-of-the-way, and otherwise forgotten compositions and transforming them through creative filters, or otherwise ironically recasting them. She is uncovering lost songs that, when sung in the present day by a powerful, young, razor-smart black woman such as herself, they become eyebrow-raising revelations. I recommend your students follow her example of straightforward research. They will tire too soon if they only try to grow new crops in the exhausted fields of standards. And so will we. Another assignment is to look beyond genre. I failed to find existing compositions in the jazz genre during the Trump presidency that sufficiently addressed my rage and fear. Instead, I went to Bob Dylan and worked with collaborators to pull compositions into the jazz sphere. I'm fortunate that the jazz idiom is ultimately syncretic. That is, any other form of music it encounters and finds valuable, it will take up and transform. It is that flexibility that allowed me to perform songs like Everything is Broken with my own band, and to record A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall with Branford Marsalis, and to make it work. Next, I assert that students in every genre of music need to be attempting to write new material, at least in terms of lyrics, though they should not shy away from fully charted songwriting. I have been fortunate to have had several excellent and ingenious writing partners who have provided me with gorgeous, challenging, and emotionally inspiring musical vehicles for my own lyrics. Moreover, I have been able to tap the great composers and improvisers of instrumental jazz, Wayne Shorter, Joe Zawinul, Dexter Gordon, Jaco Pastorius, in order to create signature musical events, and at least potentially things that broaden the diversity of material for the rest of my fellow singers. That keeps stuff fresh. The act of writing allows me to work in a related area of musical creativity, to share my ongoing attempts to just make sense of my life. By writing lyrics to transcriptions of the recordings of great improvised jazz solos, I have a hand in making new and extended jazz arias. Such a habit allows me the privilege of creatively juxtaposing favorite instrumental compositions with the works of my favorite poets. For instance, in one of my favorites of my own lyrics, I was able to translate the works of the 13th century Persian mystic Jalaluddin Rumi through the ringing chord changes of the 20th century composer Duke Ellington. I have also been involved in writing and co-writing entirely new songs. I don't bring this up to imply in any way that writing is easy or some casual creative addendum. Far from it. If anything, the act of writing is yet another proving ground for an artist's self-discipline, stamina, patience, and overall creative prowess. But Harkening back to our previous conversation about embodying the songs, it can be much easier for a singer to embody a composition he or she had a hand in fashioning than if any number of pieces written years ago by other people. One more thing. Whether writing new pieces or recasting old ones, the singer needs to be in charge of developing and choosing new material, her or himself, regardless of the source. And I'll tell you why, by relating to you the terribly sad story of the absolute most regrettable and humiliating performance in my entire career. In fact, it happened in Berlin. Yeah, Berlin, where I was to perform a commissioned piece with the great WDR Big Band to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall and German reunification. Some of you may have even been at that concert. I hope not. From the first phone call with the concert's producer, I had great trepidation about this concert. After all, why should an American singer come to Berlin to sing about the pain of the wall and the joy of its downfall to those who lived it? In spite of my expressed reservations, the producer assured me that, in his opinion, I was the only jazz singer for the task. He even had commissioned a new piece in my honor, one that would use the words of, he said, the greatest thinkers of the era. He said, well, I'm mortified to tell you that by the end of the gentleman's commission piece, I had recited the words of everyone from Desmond Tutu to Martin Luther King Jr., from Gorbachev to Gandhi, and finished off with great steaming helpings of, wait for it, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. The whole thing was an insult to the audience. So they did the sensible thing. They shouted and booed and headed for the exits. Well, to this day, I am horrified by the memory. I shall always regret my decision to trust someone else to decide the content of a concert of mine, especially on such an important occasion. Good heavens. And I can never apologize to that audience. I can never get a second chance. And indeed, I have not been invited back to sing in Berlin since then. So please trust me when I say the singer must take charge of his or her material. Well, we've talked about the need for the singer to embody the music. We've talked about the need for the singer to develop and tailor signature content. Let's talk about framing. Our students need to focus on learning the art of stagecraft. A conservatory recital, however well attended and received, is far different from a performance for a paying audience. Away from the conservatory, what one says in between songs matters. The way an ensemble and the soloist enters and exits the stage matters, both in timing, attitude, and manner. The order of songs matters. The linking of compositions in ways that tell overt and covert stories matters. The pacing, the diversity of rhythms, dynamics, and soloists, the ability to recite a poem effectively, or tell a joke. These things matter. Jokes can make a big difference to an audience. When people are laughing, their mouths open up, ha ha ha, and you can slip the truth in. Furthermore, I want to suggest to your students that they not think of things as a set of music, but an adventure of music. An adventure has a hopeful beginning, filled with anticipation. Along the way, one learns, is frightened, falls down, is astonished, gleeful, and every great adventure has one or two high points. Now, I think of those high points as the emotional targets of a performance. These are the moments of apotheosis toward which the singer drives an audience throughout the experience. You're a tour guide, if you will. And these are the spots that you're really waiting to show people. They're the spots audiences walk away really remembering. It's what they'll talk about in the lobby, go home and wonder over. It's what makes them want to buy an LP or a CD or a book or a shirt. And the next time the singer comes to town, they'll ask, "Hey, honey, do you remember that time when Kurt Elling sang that one song in concert and we cried together? I'll never forget it. Hey, what do you say we go and hear what he's got in store for us this time?" That kind of reaction does not happen based on anyone's mere technical vocal mastery. Just after 9/11, I had a record coming out, Flirting with Twilight. It was an all-romance record, lush with horn arrangements. I was supposed to give the premiere performance in Chicago very soon after the attack had happened. In fact, had my concert been scheduled for one day sooner, it would have been one day too soon. And even then, the wounds were fresh. It was necessary for me to reframe the entire concert in such a way that I could use the music of romance to at least try to really feed people. We sang the national anthem. I then had my pianist begin improvising an emotionally appropriate underscore to a small speech. I had written this and memorized it. I spoke directly of the pain and confusion everybody was feeling. I reminded people that we are, each of us, at all times, within a mystic circle of light whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. That no thing, no event, no disaster or catastrophe can keep us or take us out of that circle. I reminded them of the fact that matter cannot be made or unmade. Everything is eternal. That is the nature of grace. I then asked my audience, now, what do you think a God of such grace would say to us tonight? The ensemble played the introduction, and I sang, "Nothing's gonna harm you, not while I'm around." How is it that a hit song from a Broadway show that's about a guy who butchers people, chops them up, puts them into meat pies, is the right song to sing to comfort people after 9/11? That's framing. The audience of that night arrived full of dread and sorrow and ended up demanding encore after encore. What's more, the show was not reviewed by the music writer at the Chicago Tribune. It was instead reviewed by request of the writer herself, by the religion editor. She wrote, "I'd been looking for signs of the spirit of grace all week long, but it did not come from the White House. It did not come from the news. It did not come from my neighbors or even from church. It came from a jazz concert." I submit to you that a moment like that one is the reason we train our whole selves to be prepared, not just our voices. That's the music. That's the message, the sound, the feeling we singers want to produce and take part in. That's what your singers are really coming to you to learn. Of course, most of this is going to come in experience. I'm just trying to help you point them in a broad direction toward the possibilities of power that are within them, given much more than mere virtuosity. As Rilke tells us, Wunder ist nicht nur im unerklärten Überstehen der Gefahr. Erst in einer klaren, rein gewährten Leistung wird das wunderbar. Mitzuwirken ist nicht Überhebung an dem unbeschreiblichen Bezug. Immer inniger wird die Verwebung. Nur getragen sein ist nicht genug. Deine ausgeübten Kräfte spanne, bis sie reichen, zwischen zweien Widersprüchen. Denn im Manne will der Gott beraten sein. Someday, I'm gonna put that to music. Danke sehr.